The year is 1211. The Mongol horsemen appear on the horizon like a storm, unstoppable, merciless. Cities burn, empires crumble, and the earth itself seems to tremble beneath their hooves. At their head rides a man whose name would echo through history, whispered in fear for centuries: Genghis Khan. But behind the legend lies a question that chills the blood. Did he truly slaughter 40 million people? Or has history painted him in shadows darker than reality? To understand the truth, we must journey back, not just to the battlefields, but into the heart of a man who forged an empire from fire and blood. This is not just a story of death, but of conquest, ambition, and a legacy drenched in controversy. Before he was Genghis Khan, he was Temüjin, a boy born into a world of knives and betrayal. His father, poisoned by rivals, his family cast out to starve on the frozen steppe. This was not a man born a monster, but forged by a world that showed him no mercy. By the age of 20, he had already survived assassination attempts, enslavement, and the brutal politics of the tribes. And when he finally united the Mongols, it was not just through strength, but through a promise: follow me and the world will kneel. Modern historians whisper the number 40 million, a death toll so vast it reshaped the Earth's climate. Forests regrew where cities once stood, the carbon footprint of empires erased. But here's the terrifying question: how do we know? The Mongols left no meticulous death records. Their victims often had no one left to bury them. So where does this number come from? The answer lies in the terrified scribbles of those who survived. Persian chroniclers wrote of pyramids of skulls. Chinese records speak of provinces emptied of human sound. European monks, hearing only distant rumors, called it the wrath of God. The Mongols did not just kill, they weaponized terror. A city that resisted was made an example. A city that surrendered, its people were spared, but absorbed into the machine of war and the punishment of God. Had you not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. Was this a man who glorified slaughter, or a strategist who understood that fear could conquer where swords could not? The truth is more complicated than numbers. When the Mongols left, the silence remained. No lamentations for the dead, no chronicles of the fallen, just emptiness. But if we listen closely, the past still whispers. Scattered across the ruins of empires, the victims of Genghis Khan's conquests left behind fragments of their horror. And in these fragments, we begin to see the true scale of the devastation. In 1219, the Khwarezmian Empire made a fatal mistake. They executed Genghis Khan's diplomats, an insult he would repay in blood. What followed was not just a war, but an extermination. The Persian chronicler Juvayni wrote of cities where no dog dared to bark. In Urgench, every man, woman, and child was slaughtered. So many corpses that the Mongols had to pile them into pyramids just to clear the streets. In Nishapur, they killed so thoroughly that even the cats and dogs were slain, lest any life remain. Today, archaeologists still find the bones, layer upon layer, tangled together, a silent testament to the rage of the Mongols. But Persia was not the only graveyard. In China, the Jin dynasty crumbled beneath the hooves of the Mongol horde. Chinese records tell of provinces where the fields were white with bones. One official wrote in his final moments, "They leave no one, not the old praying in the temples, not the children hiding in the wells." By the time the Mongols were done, northern China's population had been halved. Some say 30 million died. Others simply stopped counting. When historians speak of 40 million dead, they are not just counting battles. They speak of a catastrophe so vast it altered the course of history. The Black Death, which would later ravage Europe, may have found its path through the ruins the Mongols left behind. Forests grew where farms once fed millions. The very climate cooled as if the earth itself mourned. In some regions, the population didn't recover for 200 years. Entire cultures erased. The dead cannot speak, but their bones tell a story. And in the next chapter, we will ask the most dangerous question of all. Did Genghis Khan truly order this carnage, or has history blamed one man for the fury of an empire? Genghis Khan did not conquer alone. Behind every massacre, every burned city, there were generals, scouts, messengers, an empire of men who carried out his will. But how much of the slaughter was truly his command? And how much was the unchecked brutality of an unstoppable war machine? The Mongols perfected psychological warfare. A city that resisted was annihilated, not just to punish, but to send a message. message. The next city would surrender without a fight. Efficiency, not madness, drove the slaughter, but dig deeper and a pattern emerges. Genghis Khan often spared artisans, scholars, even loyal soldiers. Was this the work of a mindless butcher or a calculating ruler building an empire? Here lies the great void in history. The Mongols kept no meticulous records of their atrocities. Most of what we know comes from their victims. Historians writing in terror, monks transcribing rumors. What if the truth was distorted? So where does 40 million come from? Demographers trace the gaps. Regions where records show millions, then silence. But war, famine, and plague danced together. The Mongols didn't kill every soul. They broke the world, and the world died in the aftermath. Perhaps the most terrifying truth is this: Genghis Khan may not have even known the full toll. For when you unleash the storm, do you count every drop of rain? Genghis Khan did not conquer alone. Behind every massacre, every burned city, there were generals, scouts, messengers, an empire of men who carried out his will. But how much of the slaughter was truly his command? And how much was the unchecked brutality of an unstoppable war machine? The Mongols perfected psychological warfare. A city that resisted was annihilated, not just to punish, but to send a message. The next city would surrender without a fight. Efficiency, not madness, drove the slaughter, but dig deeper and a pattern emerges. Genghis Khan often spared artisans, scholars, even loyal soldiers. Was this the work of a mindless butcher or a calculating ruler building an empire? Here lies the great void in history. The Mongols kept no meticulous records of their atrocities. Most of what we know comes from their victims. Historians writing in terror, monks transcribing rumors. What if the truth was distorted? So where does 40 million come from? Demographers trace the gaps. Regions where records show millions, then silence. But war, famine, and plague danced together. The Mongols didn't kill every soul. They broke the world, and the world died in the aftermath. Perhaps the most terrifying truth is this: Genghis Khan may not have even known the full toll. For when you unleash the storm, do you count every drop of rain? History remembers Genghis Khan as a conqueror, a butcher, a god of war made flesh. But no man, not even the great Khan, rules an empire alone. Behind every order, every massacre, there were others. Generals who interpreted his will, sons who hungered for their own glory. And in the chaos of conquest, how many deaths were truly his to claim? Subutai, the dog of war, the strategist who conquered lands Genghis Khan never saw. His tactics were brutal, even by Mongol standards, diverting rivers to drown cities, using plague victims as living weapons. But when historians tally the dead, whose hand truly held the knife? In Kievan Rus, after Subutai's campaign, travelers reported no birds sang for years. The ground was too choked with corpses. Even the great Khan could not control his heirs. Yoki, his firstborn, slaughtered entire villages on raids his father never ordered. Chagatai burned libraries full of knowledge Genghis would have preserved. And Ogedei, drunk on power and wine, he greenlit sieges that even veteran commanders called excessive. After Genghis Khan's death, the body count kept rising. But were these his orders, or his empire spiraling out of control? In 2015, researchers found a ledger in Mongolia, not a chronicle of battles, but a census, a record of every craftsman, scholar, and soldier spared during the conquests. The handwriting changes every few pages, different scribes, different commanders, all interpreting the Khan's will. Perhaps this is the truth we've missed. The 40 million dead were not one man's doing, but the sum of 1,000 smaller cruelties, an empire's worth of blood on hands that history forgot. We ask if Genghis Khan killed 40 million, but empires are not built by one man, only remembered that way. The real horror? No single hand could have held so much death. It took an entire civilization. The earth remembers what history forgets. These bones do not lie. They do not exaggerate. They simply are. And what they tell us about Genghis Khan's empire may be the closest we'll ever come to the truth. In 2018, archaeologists uncovered a horror near Lake Zaysan. Hundreds of men, women, and children killed not in battle, but methodically executed. The pattern is unmistakable. Hands bound behind backs, killing blows from behind. This wasn't war. This was disposal. The Mongols kept meticulous records of their herds, their trade routes, their silk stockpiles. But human lives? Those they measured only in absence. Scientists studying ice cores made a chilling discovery. Around the time of the Mongol conquest, conquests, the planet's carbon levels dropped suddenly. Why? Because 40 million people no longer breathed, no longer farmed, no longer burned fires in the night. In some regions, it took 200 years for populations to recover. The world, after Genghis Khan, was literally colder. In 2003, geneticists made a bombshell discovery. 0.5% of the global male population shares a unique Y chromosome marker, tracing back to one 13th century Mongol man. The math suggests Genghis Khan fathered thousands of children, even as his armies erased millions. This is the paradox of the Khan. He exterminated nations, then repopulated them with his own bloodline. A conqueror's legacy written not just in death, but in DNA. 40 million dead? The bones say yes, but they whisper another truth too. Genghis Khan wasn't a demon, nor a god, just a man who understood, better than any before or since, how fragile civilizations truly are. All conquerors become legends, but legends distort, they simplify, they turn men into monsters or gods. Before we close this chapter, we must ask, what did Genghis Khan truly leave behind? Not just bones and ashes, but the invisible marks that still shape our world today. The Mongols did what no empire had dared. They connected the world. Their Yam system of relay stations linked Peking to Budapest. For the first time, gunpowder, paper, and plague could travel uninterrupted across continents. Today's globalized world runs along routes the Mongols paved. The Great Khan's empire was the first true information superhighway, built with blood but birthing the modern age. In an age of crusades and inquisitions, the Mongols practiced something radical: meritocracy. A Christian could command Muslim troops. A Persian accountant could outrank a Mongol prince. So long as you served the empire, your tongue, your god, even your enemy's blood meant nothing. Was this enlightenment, or simply the cold calculus of rulers who knew diversity strengthened their grip? Perhaps both. The Khan's empire was a brutal experiment in unity, one we're still learning from today. No empire truly dies. It shatters, and the pieces become new weapons. Russia's autocracy, forged under the Mongol yoke. China's borders, drawn by Kublai's hand. Even America's cavalry tactics echo Subutai's lightning strikes. We live in the world the Mongols made, not their world of horse and blade, but one where borders blur, cultures collide, and power wears many faces. The words shatter like ice. When the pieces fall away, they reveal the vast Mongolian plain at dawn, empty, but for a single horseman riding away from the camera until he's just a speck on the horizon. Then gone. Not a devil, not a god, just a man who rode out of the darkness and left the world forever changed.